some problems that they kind of set them back with some of their magnets and so on and so forth. So they're going to be firing that thing up again. They just did one single test, but one of the most exciting things for me, anyway, the immediate things from the LHC was the grid. The guys that invented and developed and put into place the Internet developed the grid, which makes the Internet, even with our fastest connections, T1s or what have you, look like slow dial-up. I mean, it's like instantaneous information, which hopefully will start being utilized in the private sector soon. Now, and
that could indeed be part of what we're seeing as a basic core technology, the idea of this molecular entrainment, where object A in Paris instantly vibrates with whatever object B is doing in New York, that kind of thing.
Yes. That's very fascinating. And one other thing to kind of go back to the instinct level, I recently saw a documentary. It was called Search for Adam, and they made a very interesting discovery that they could take and do a DNA swab or just a regular swab and run it through DNA analysis, and they could look at the chromosomes in the DNA, and they could see that to trace back all the way back to one single person, there's like a mutation that happens within humans. And so everyone with this specific little mutation in their genes, they determined were all related because it all came from one father. You know, it all kind of branches out like branches of a tree. So the scientist, he went to Mongolia, as a matter of fact, and he did a little test, and he found several people in the United States that were all related, but they didn't know each other, all because of this little mutation that he found in their DNA, which led to a discussion here on the program about having these little psychic blinks or being in tune with certain people. You know, maybe something instilled in our DNA that we resonate on the same frequency even. It's all up for of course, speculation and just throwing ideas out there, but it makes sense.
It's not necessarily invalid.
Yes.
It's just a different way of conceiving how DNA chooses to organize itself. And if we acknowledge that, for instance, the universe is not little rocks in terms of atoms whizzing around in space, but in fact is the illusion of atoms created by energetic collisions of various different kinds of energy, creating, if you will, vast quantities of ripples into a pond until the ripples take over our whole perception and form the universe in front of our face, then who's to say, in fact, that we don't exist as Kurt Vonnegut thought in terms of like grand falloons, where you would have these particular connections to people all around the planet that you might never meet, but you're tied together both at a karmic level, but perhaps even at a super organism level.
Right.
And that you, as existing as a human, might be merely one very complex sensory organ, if you will, for a grander, larger being. There's no reason that the universe couldn't organize itself that way.
Yes, indeed. Fascinating stuff. All right, we're at the top of the hour. Got to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll open up the phone lines completely. 312-239-8902. That's... We're going to get Clif back in here. Clif, welcome back.
Yep.
All right, let's see what we got here. We're going to go right to the phone lines here and see who we've got in there in the mix of things. So let's see here. Let's get them on the air. All right, caller, you're on. Your name, where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Derek from Minnesota. Just wish all the encouragement of the universe to both of you. You're both doing a great job at what you do. My observation, and I'd like Cliff to comment on this, it seems like the dominator society that is pretty much in its dying gasps right now, they rely on fear to control us. And, and they've even made the most natural thing in the world, which we call death, the boogeyman. And we are here within the context of eternity. We're here a blink. I mean, we are in the blink right now. And they make this fear of death. If you listen to our news, the whole culture is like, oh, so-and-so many died in a plane wreck, and so many died in this war. And they just make this thing called death, which is merely transition into a new state. They make it the boogeyman. And hopefully humanity is going to wake up that you're just eternal creatures, eternal spirits having a very brief experience in meat in this human body, but it's a blink. And that's what keeps me from going crazy, because I see some calamity down the line. But, you know, looking at the big picture, which is what I need to do to stay sane and to be relatively fear-free, is that this is just one small, tiny, infinitesimal chapter in the greater aspect of existence. So I'd like to hear a comment on that.
That kind of basically is our assumption as well, that the powers that be are definitely into control mode. They're facing a desperate time, and their ability to ratchet up the fear is rather evident. They've been really working it since 2000 very blatantly. Prior to that, it was a little bit more subtle, but nonetheless existent and active at least since the mid-40s. And obviously they're driven to a certain extent by their own fear. We capture some of that in their language. And these are people that are very afraid of death, whereas, and to a certain extent are projecting it or attempting to project it out on the rest of the planet. Because bear in mind, when they die, they lose their power. Whereas if you don't have power, it's not a big deal. It's one less thing to worry about, if you will, right? So we all die. Well, yeah, that's fine. At least I don't have to worry about surrendering all these things that I'm tied to by attachment. And at an underlying level, we see that meme all the time. The be afraid meme, and it just focuses in many different ways. But a more now blatant aspect of it is the constant urge from media since maybe the last 100 years towards attachment. Attach your ego to this, buy that, define yourself this way. Constantly, and these messages are pouring out on us, and they have an impact on the ego, forming the ego into basically an attachment machine. And if you go and look at the previous history of humanity, the whole pathway to liberation is to become unattached to things and concentrate on exposing yourself to your own consciousness and really observing reality and not getting hung up on these abstractions and illusions. Unfortunately, the current monetary system is just such one of those abstractions and illusions taken to a huge level, and it's going to crash around our ears. It's really simple, though. The concept of existing or taking a positive message from this rather bleak forecast. And it's kind of like, let's use a metaphor first and then apply it. And the metaphor is that you're standing on a karate mat or a judo mat, and the opponent or your partner in this exercise is down on their side because you've just thrown them down. What they're going to do is they're going to try and kick your foot out from underneath you and throw you off balance. And the solution to it, of course, is to just lift up your feet as their foot passes underneath and then put it back down, and you're fine. And all their energy has been wasted. And at the moment, what we're seeing is an attempt to sort of kick our feet out from underneath us by getting us focused on this horrific problem with the economy. And you notice that of course, it's sort of, quote, natural that the media would focus on it, but nonetheless, they're directing our attention deliberately to these very dire predictions and so forth on it, and we need not participate in nor worry about the paper debt economy. True, it means that instantly, if you had a paper debt attached retirement, you no longer have that, and you need a new way to live in the universe for your retirement years. But nonetheless, you need not run on out and shoot yourself just because your illusionary dollars have floated away, because they're going to float away for the whole planet. And we need to just restructure how humans behave relative to this new environment that we're finding ourselves in. And you note, if you watch things like Bloomberg and CNBC, you're going to see that a lot of their labeling is now trying to direct you into the idea of, quote, a new economy.
Yes, that's very true.
And that message is there. It's underlying everywhere, and they're going to soon have the new currency to get you all hung up on attachment to debt again and getting involved with this new currency, and somebody's going to presumably take the new currency in exchange for their real goods. Well, maybe some of these Chinese that produce the real goods aren't going to be so quick to do so.
Yes.
So I don't think it's going to go over, but nonetheless, that memering is out there.
You know, there's something very interesting that whenever they started the bailout packages for Wall Street, the banks, The public didn't like that at all. I mean, they sent hundreds, if not thousands, of emails to congressmen and senators saying, don't pass this. Of course, it didn't get passed, and then they put a traffic cop, if you will, on their websites to kind of monitor and kind of slow those emails down a little bit. And then they changed the name of it from bailout package to economic recovery package.
Or rescue. Rescue came first.
Yes, rescue came first. So they had to word it right because they realized, okay, well, the bailout doesn't sound too good. People don't like that. So they changed the name of it. And they do that quite often with a lot of things, don't they?
Oh, sure. If you're paying any attention at all to broadcast media or corporate-controlled or owned media, you're subject to very deliberate censorship and word substitution and mind control. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you'll notice that Microsoft and a number of other companies have recently received patents on the idea of unobtrusive net censorship, such that you write an email in which you use very nasty words about the current political structure of the United States, for instance, and you send it to your buddy in Alabama, and along the way, that gets involved in one of these little censor bots, and it takes out all those nasty words and substitutes other words that are more kind and favorable to viewing to the view of that particular political administration. And your recipient doesn't know that it's been done.
Yes, that's very true.
And you're not aware of it unless they reference it back to you and so on. And you say, what? I didn't write that. And this is an attempt to filter the net and apply censorship and thought control at a very blatant level. And there's the fact that there's 40 or 50 patents for these kind of software techniques is rather discouraging. And in fact, they're putting up one of these in Australia, which is going to cut off about 90,000 servers to me. And really is probably foretelling the death of my technology.
That's very true.
If that's happening, it eliminates it.
Yeah, because they're actually talking about doing intranet systems, like a lot of the countries actually do. They do these intranet systems, but and it's just a matter of time before it gets to the United States. All right, next caller, you are on. Your name, where are you calling from?
Oh, this is Carol in Colorado.
Hi, Carol. How are you tonight?
Just wonderful. Hey, thanks for having Clif on. I just love him. And I was wondering about the silver float information that was coming through on the WebBot report.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? About the silver which?
Floats. It was talking about the gold and silver.
Yeah, we're reaching, apparently, as part of the current desperation and the dissolution of the dollar, we're reaching the point at which they'll no longer be able to manipulate the silver and gold market. This is both good and bad. It will be good for those people that own silver and gold in that the nominal price in dollars will rapidly escalate, probably. What we really get out of it is a hint that silver and to a slightly lesser extent gold will float back to historic means, and that further relationship to each other, so about 12 to 1 or 16 to 1 ratio of silver to gold, but also that we may be seeing the potential for hard metal, probably currencies, in the sense of gold coins, etc., on a 1-to-1 value to reach about 3 times the level of the nominal paper debt indices, which would be like the Dow. So, for instance, the Dow Jones Industrial Average may fall to 300 in our particular model, and at that time, gold would be worth 900. Now, maybe dollars or, cows or whoever knows what we'll be using as currency at that point, but the ratio is what's important.
Right. Was there a time frame? Have you seen that coming?
We're actually picking up that the gold and silver markets begin to react to the wealth destruction which is currently underway, and our reaction, let me get my glasses on here and I look on the chart, it looks that we'll start seeing visible signs about the 14th of February, which is about when we